Good evening, everyone. The Ranter is back to get into yet another one of his rambling diatribes of the news of the day. Now, I was gonna have like a moment of reflection of, how I take to politics and how I take to people's different opinions on politics. And sometimes I try to be middle of the road. Sometimes I go on the flaming side of how my discourse is. And you do have to think about sometimes and have moments of reflection about, did I really need to go that route and say that or do that or whatever? And I'm a flawed mortal human being, and mistakes can be made, but at the same time, I'm one of these people who is reactionary, where I might not instigate it, but I will finish it. And sometimes it just devolves into really pettiness from my part. So that's my mea culpa on that. But when thinking about this and my behavior, I can't help but think of the lyrics of the song that I normally use, at least 7 seconds of it, for most of my intros in my video. In the midst of this song that Dennis Leary sings, after he says a bunch of horrible things, and he goes, maybe I shouldn't be singing the song, ranting and raving and carrying on. Maybe they're right when they say I'm wrong. Nah, I'm an asshole. Pretty much is the gist of that. That I am going to defend the point of view. I don't really think I flat out tell anybody what their opinions are wrong. I just sort of challenge it back and forth, and if it devolves, and I go right into the mud with everybody else. And as far as what I do, I am responsible for my own words and my own actions on that. So, there you go. That aside, that's the reflection point of that. Out of the way from there. The purposes of getting into this video is not only the 1-2 punch that happened to Donald Trump, but it's actually a 1-2-3 punch that's happened in the past week, when you think about it. I ended up the last video talking about, pardon me as I'm causing earthquakes in my legs. I ended the last video talking about his alleged comments towards our fallen servicemen. In those situations where he was supposed to go to the memorial that was being held in France, and he was there, he was in France, but he couldn't possibly make it to the memorial service because of weather. It's funny how all the other world leaders managed to get there. His surrogates were able to get there, but the most powerful man in the world was unable to get there. The president, who has the most powerful military apparatus in the world, couldn't put together a motorcade because the president of France would have been more than happy to help facilitate a motorcade going from point A to point B for him. So that'd be bullshit. But the excuses given that it was due to inclement weather, yeah, that's interesting. That's amazing for, again, the most powerful human being on God's green earth and all. But when you hear what he allegedly said, you didn't want to go because it's just a bunch of losers in the cemetery. Doesn't that sound like him? Isn't that his words? Isn't that what he considers people? Losers and suckers. Losers for dying in a foreign war, and suckers for why are you even there in the first place? There's nothing for you personally to gain. And that is his guiding star, isn't it? What's in it for me? Was there nothing in it for them? If there was nothing in it for them, then they're just suckers doing that for whatever reason, because he doesn't understand the ability of serving something beyond yourself, or having the empathy. Well, we know he doesn't have empathy. Fuck, we know that. So what he allegedly said to John Kelly at the gravesite of his son. A lot of people are saying that this anonymous informant might have been John Kelly himself. It would have been interesting. I don't know if I buy that or not. However, I buy what is said, despite the sycophants who rally and says, "Oh, he never said that. I was there. I was personally there. I was in his pocket. He never said that." Where when in front of the grave of John Kelly's son, and he says, and I think it's actually an honesty when it comes to Trump, is that he does not understand. He doesn't understand why they went to war. Why did they go and volunteer for war? You know, a number of news organizations backed up these claims of what Trump said. And we went through it the last video, and I'm just sort of touching on it before I move on to other things. One of the reasons why I believe that he said the way what is alleged that he said is not only the fact that you can actually hear his words saying it in your mind. You know that's what he would have said, but he compounded his excuses on not saying it with lies. First, we already know what the lie about not going to the memorial because of weather, bullshit, lie, whatever. But when he said he didn't call John McCain a loser, in conjunction with the explanation that he didn't say any of this stuff, he never called John McCain a loser, it's on tape. He disgraced him on tape in 2015 that he's not a war hero and he's a loser. He likes people that don't get captured, okay? He went into why he is a war hero. And the subsequent things that happened while he was captured. And why he was a war hero for staying there when he had an option of getting out, but he didn't want to leave anyone behind. That's why he's a war hero. That is something that Trump will never understand ever in his life. Because that does not compute for him. That is beyond the limited box of information that he was allowed to skate throughout his entire life because he's wealthy. He doesn't need to learn any of this shit. I mean, I can buy the comment when they're commemorating World War I, and he asks which ones were the good guys. I can buy that he did not know who the good guys were, and why it mystified him. Why he wondered why the Americans joined the side of the Allies in World War II. It's weird, right? So yeah, we have that. Then we had Michael Cohen's book come out, Mr. Fixer himself. And here's why I also buy the accounts that are in this book. Because Trump and the DOJ went out of their way to try to prevent him from having this book see the light of day. So much so that they threw him back in jail under the condition that he would be released if he did not release this book. I mean, it wasn't an official count, but pretty much the judge who sent him home instead of sent him to jail pretty much got the gist that the reason why he was there is because he was writing a book. And the judge figured that out and rightly scolded the Trump administration on it. In fact, let me find the relevant article on that, so it's not just me just bloviating for no apparent reason. Okay, this was back in July. This article is from July 23rd. Judge orders Cohen's release citing retaliation over tell-all book. It's from the New York Times. A judge agreed that federal officials had returned Michael D. Cohen to prison because he wanted to publish a book this fall about President Trump. When Michael Cohen, President's one-time lawyer and fixer, met with probation officers this month to complete paperwork that would have let him serve the balance of his prison term at home, he found a catch. Mr. Cohen was already out on furlough because of coronavirus, but to remain at home, he was asked to sign a document that would have barred him from publishing a book during the rest of his sentence. Mr. Cohen balked because he was in fact writing a book, a tell-all memoir about his former boss, the president. The officers sent him back to jail, to prison. On Thursday of that July, a federal judge ruled that the decision to return Mr. Cohen to custody amounted to retaliation by the government and ordered him to be released again into home confinement. Mr. Cohen is expected back in his Manhattan apartment on Friday. Quote, I make the finding that the purpose of transferring Mr. Cohen from furlough to home confinement to jail is retaliatory, Judge Alvin K. Hellerstein of Federal District Court in Manhattan said in court, and it's retaliatory because of his desire to exercise his First Amendment rights, to publish a book and to discuss anything about the book or anything else he wants on social media and with others. Judge Hellerstein's decision was a remarkable rebuke of prison and probation officers and, by extension, the Trump administration. It raised concerns that the authorities had used a penal system to squelch the free speech rights of one of Mr. Trump's enemies in an effort to protect the president. Justin Long, a spokesman for the Bureau of Prisons, said that it was not uncommon for prison officers to restrict inmates' contact with the media, but he said that Mr. Cohen's refusal to agree to the media ban played no role whatsoever in the decision to remand him to secure custody, nor did his intent to publish a book. Any assertions that the decision to remand Michael Cohen to prison was retaliatory action is patently false, Mr. Long said. The question of Mr. Cohen's release came before Judge Hellerstein after Mr. Cohen sued U.S. officials on Monday night, claiming that the Trump administration had sent him back to custody to prevent him from completing the book, violating his freedom of speech. In court papers, Mr. Cohen said the book would paint Mr. Trump as a racist and overly revealing details about the president's behavior behind closed doors. Mr. Cohen also pointed out that Mr. Trump and his supporters had sought to derail the publication of books written by John R. Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, and Mr. Trump's niece, Mary L. Trump, from whose best-selling memoir laid bare the history of the dysfunction in her family. E. Dana Perry, one of Mr. Cohen's lawyers, called the judge's order a victory for the First Amendment. So, yeah, there's more, but you get the gist of it. The judge saw through this as retaliatory. They were sending him back to prison for no other reason that he refused to not continue writing and publish his book. Now, within the book, there is a lot of lovely little tidbits about Donald Trump. And some of them are, frankly, really disgusting and dear. In one of the instances in the book, Cohen writes on how Donald Trump's hatred for President Obama was so much that he hired a lookalike, a faux Obama, so that he could castigate him and pretend to fire him on video. So this guy is so petty, so shallow, your President Trump is so fucking small that he hires a lookalike Barack Obama so that he can insult him and then fire him. Repeatedly. That is, of course, such a adorable, adorable little tidbit. Cohen goes into a lot of other details in his book Disloyal, 400 plus pages. Cohen rips through the accounts of dozens of incidents ranging from Trump allegedly cheating mom-and-pop vendors for services rendered at Trump properties to those of the president making racist remarks to his own involvement in trying to make a deal with Trump for a Trump Tower in Moscow. That's in addition to Cohen's narrative of the payoff Trump made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels shortly before the 2016 presidential election, which was made via Cohen. According to Cohen, Trump told his former lawyer that blacks and Latinos were too stupid to vote for him, and said that any country run by black leaders were shitholes. On another occasion, after the death of South African President Nelson Mandela, Cohen said that Trump told him that the apartheid-era South Africa had been beautiful, and that Mandela had fucked the whole country up. Cohen also goes in deep on what he describes as President's idolization of Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom he said Trump reveres because of his immense personal wealth and immersive control over his country. An entire society and civilization bent to the will of a single man was how Trump viewed the ideal historical form of government. Cohen writes, with him as the man in charge, of course. Cohen also alleged several episodes in which Trump was casually sexist to women and grabbed women in the Trump Organization office and kissed them on the lips. In describing the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, Cohen described how the campaign and Trump allegedly used the media to boost him to victory. The biggest influence by far in Trump's victory, Cohen argued, was the media. Rallies broadcast live, tweets, press conferences, idiotic interviews, 24/7 wall-to-wall coverage, all without spending a penny. He's right. In addition, Cohen filled out details on the assertion that the Trump team fixed online polls to enhance the then candidate's reputation, utilizing the services of Liberty University's John Gagger, and how closely he worked with David Pecker, the former CEO of American Media, whose publications, including the National Enquirer, to catch and kill allegations of Trump's relationship with women, as well as to take down political rivals, including Senator Ted Cruz, which, came from that whole, Rafael Cruz, his father, was involved with the Kennedy assassination. Cohen also described how he personally alienated between trying to butter up and bully reporters. The latter includes the NPR's Tim Mack, when at his former employer, the Daily Beast, Mack reported an allegation that Trump's former wife, Ivana Trump, had accused him of raping her during the couple's divorce proceedings. According to Cohen, he told Mack that if he pursued the story, he would go after the journalist personally along with everyone else he possibly knows, adding, I'm warning you, tread very fucking lightly, because what I'm going to do to you is going to be fucking disgusting. Do you understand me? Is what Cohen said to this guy. New York's tough guy tone is no accident. Cohen describes at length how he saw himself as a consigliere, if I pronounce that right, of an organization not unlike the mafia. Tonally, Cohen alienates between taking accountability for his own behavior and trying to describe what he found so magnetic in Trump. The language sometimes skims close to erotic terms. It was physical, Cohen writes, emotional, not quite spiritual, but a deep longing and need that Trump filled for me. Wow, okay. But Cohen says he also saw something quite different as well. I bore witness to the real man in strip clubs, shady business meetings, he writes, and in the unguarded moments when he revealed who he really was. A cheat, a liar, a fraud, a bully, a racist, a predator, a con man. As in typical political memoirs, Cohen also saves space for some petty score settling, reserving particular disdain for one of his nemesis in the White House, former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, as well as Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, whom he described as an aristocratic man-child possessed of supreme arrogance and a completely amoral will to power. Cohen said he began writing Disloyal from prison, where he was sentenced after pleading guilty in 2018 to lying to Congress for the financial crimes and campaign finance violations involved in the hush money payments made to a woman who had said that they had sexual relations with Trump. Cohen was released earlier this year, placed in home confinement due to coronavirus concerns. After his release, the Federal Bureau of Prisons returned him to prison, saying that he had refused the conditions of his release in July. A federal judge ordered him back to the home confinement, finding that it was retaliation for Cohen's plan to publish a book. Alright, that was from the NPR. So many things that is laid out that I can totally buy. And when people go and say that, well, you know, why would anybody believe anything he says anyway? He lied. He lied to Congress. He went to prison for it. He lied for Trump. And when he was lying for Trump, those Republicans, you know, grilling him, not really grilling him, were all okay because he was on Trump's team, so they were totally buying what he was saying. But now that when the worm turned and Cohen was taking consequences for lying for his boss, and he now revealed that he was lying for his boss, all of a sudden these same Republicans who were all happy with Cohen beforehand for lying for Trump now blames him for lying. Do we live in reality? Is reality still existing? There's one more story that's coming out of this book that I want to get into. It's hard to get into because it's actually kind of very infuriating. In his book, and I'm reading this from The Independent now, Michael Cohen, oh, excuse me. Pardon us. Thank you. Some of these sites happen to have music on it for some reason. And anyway, let's not go there. Let's see if I can find one that doesn't have music on there. Hopefully. Love of God. In fact, time out a second. Time in. Alright. In the book, Michael Cohen recounts an alleged incident that happened with Trump and Cohen's daughter. The daughter of Donald Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, has recalled a creepy comments the president allegedly made about her when she was just 15. Samantha Cohen, who's now 24 years old, spoke to CNN about a series of comments Mr. Trump made about her following the release of her father's memoir on September 8th, which revealed the alleged exchange. Michael Cohen pled guilty in 2018 to tax evasion, campaign finance violations, including paying hush money to women who claimed to have affairs with Mr. Trump, and reported to prison in May 6, 2019, before being released earlier this year. In the disgraced attorney's book recounting his time working with the president named Disloyal, a memoir, Mr. Cohen claimed that Mr. Trump whistled at his 15-year-old daughter as she played tennis in 2012 and said, "What a piece of ass, I would love some of that." The president was then told by Mr. Cohen that she was his daughter, and Mr. Trump eventually replied, "Well, when did she get that hot?" before he called her over and kissed the 15-year-old on the cheek, according to the Daily Mail. Mr. Cohen also alleged that the president warned his daughter to, "Be careful, I'll be dating your friends in a few years." Speaking on CNN on Monday, when this came out, the now 24-year-old said that the encounter revealed in her father's book made her think that the president is interested in younger women. Ms. Cohen said that she did not get the impression that Mr. Trump, who had been married to his wife Melania for 7 years, at the time of the incident was hitting on her directly. However, she added on Monday, I had the impression he was interested in younger women and that, women would age out for him, and then one woman became too old, he'd find a new younger one. The 24-year-old told CNN that the comments went over her head at the time, and she had said women and girls became desensitized to that kind of behavior. However, Ms. Cohen claimed that she does clearly remember Mr. Trump's allegedly disparaging comments about her father that day. She said that he told Mr. Cohen, "There's no way she got her looks from you. Thank God you married a beautiful woman." Ms. Cohen said, "I was desensitized to men making creeping comments about me," and added, "and I was not desensitized to someone blatantly insulting and degrading my father in front of me. Someone who I looked up to and loved very much, and then it was very upsetting to me, and it made me think, okay, maybe Trump doesn't treat my father so well." The White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnroe, whatever on her, I don't care, told CNN on Monday that in response to claims Michael Cohen is a disgraced felon and disbarred liar who lied to Congress. You lied for your boss, Kayleigh. He has lost all credibility, and it's unsurprising to see his latest attempt profit off of lies. Did you like that accent? Came out of nowhere. Last week, in an interview with Vanity Fair, Ms. Cohen also criticized the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, and described her as phony. Ms. Trump lived in the same building as Ms. Cohen when she was growing up, but the 24-year-old claimed to CNN, "She never paid me much attention. If I saw her in the lobby without my father, she would just look past me and ignore me." She added, She's cold. I always felt like I wasn't good enough for her attention, but that was my impression." Well, that's adorable. It doesn't really matter to me. There, well, there it is. Now, we've gone around and round on the life and fate of Jeffrey Epstein and those circle of people around him who gain favor and enjoy the same disgusting corruption that he was involved with underage girls. Having a madam as a girlfriend to provide him such girls that she would pick up and condition for him. We already have we already seen the names pop up of people that could have been associated with Mr. Cohen, or not Mr. Cohen, Mr. Epstein. We know we have seen privy to the names in the black book that the lady had, because that got published. A lot of famous names on there, a lot of powerful names on there. Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, you can probably say they interconnect in their depravity, whereas Weinstein would go after starlets, and the good old boys in the back room who would also do the same thing. Epstein, who was in favor with people of political power and wealth, felt the same amount of, I could do whatever I want with no consequences, and he did the worst possible human being thing that one can do, which is systematically hurting, sexually assaulting, raping young girls, children. And we know that Donald Trump, his name is right next to Epstein's in a lawsuit involving a rape of a 13-year-old girl that was thrown out. But his name's still there. And for all the conspiracy theories that could be true or not of other people, including Bill Clinton, including Prince Andrew, why did Billy Clinton decide to island hop a number of times on that special little island of his and not bother to tell anybody about it? We don't get any allegations about him about that, though. We have suspicion, but then again, with the Clintons, there's enough suspicions to go around. mean, QAnon Pizzagate, right? But his name was not on this rape citation next to Epstein's. Clinton had his own peccadillos, we know for a fact. But our president has a rape case pending now that they're fighting him to get DNA for. So, yeah, when you hear the story of the 15-year-old daughter of Michael Cohen and him saying what a piece of ass and he would like to get some of that, doesn't that match with all the other things that has been said over the years? What he's done, what he's alleged to have done? You know, the idea of him running one of those Miss Teen beauty pageants. I think he did one of those. And he talked about, like, when he was on Howard Stern, how, you know, there's beautiful girls and, you know, I own the building, so I could pop in there and see if everything is alright. And I would see these beautiful girls, some of them not even with clothes on. Why is this guy president? Why did you vote for him? But I digress. So you have that punch, you had the military punch, then you had Bob Woodward's punch. The weird thing about Bob Woodward's book is that he wrote a book earlier, years earlier, which Trump, like, you know, derailed, derided, you know. So if he was so opposed to Bob Woodward, why was he sitting down with interviews with him again? Maybe he slipped his mind. And then what goes up there with what he allegedly said about our military and the people that lost their lives in the foreign wars. It's right up there. He tells Bob Woodward of the seriousness of the coronavirus in early February. Now, again, I'm going to go to an article because I want to get this right. Because sometimes I will take a little bit of information and I will flight and fancy it. But I don't want to do that with this. I want to make sure I'm telling you what is being said. You've probably already read it, you probably heard it on the news. Let me relay it again. My gentle snowflakes. Okay. This is from Vox. Actually, let's not do this one just yet. This is actually new. That's a new audio tape. We will talk about that in a moment. Let's talk about the older one first, and then we'll get back to that. So bear with me. Nope, we're not doing that. Oh, shush. Okay. Weeks before eventually declaring a national emergency, President Donald Trump admitted to legendary investigative journalist Bob Woodward that he knew the coronavirus that has now killed 190,000 Americans was airborne, highly contagious, and was more deadly than even your stringent flus. And there are tapes of Trump making on-record comments, including his admission that he wanted to always play it down. The president, who minimized the virus for weeks before finally and belatedly acknowledging in mid-March that the measures needed to be taken to combat it, told Woodward on February 7th that this is deadly stuff. At the same time, Trump was publicly downplaying the dangers of the virus, claiming repeatedly that it would just go away and disappear, a refrain he has held onto to this day. "Goes through the air," Trump said during the conversation. "That's always tougher than touch. You don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you can breathe the air, and that's how it's passed." And so that's a very tricky one. It's a very delicate one. It's always more deadly than even the strangest flus. At the same time, the president was insisting publicly that his administration had the virus under control, and that it was a problem that's going away. Infamously, on February 25th, he asserted that the number of cases in the United States would go down close to zero within a couple of days. After he eventually declared a national emergency in mid-March, the president admitted to Woodward that he deliberately hiding the catastrophic impact of the virus from the American people. I want you to always play it down," the president said on March 19th. "I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic." Says the guy that will take any issue that he can find chaos as an ally to him and make it worse. You know, don't look any farther than his pitch to suburban women that he's going to save their suburban lifestyle, their American dream, by making sure no low-income housing comes to their neighborhood. Because code, that means none of those pesky blacks and Hispanics will be coming into your neighborhoods of low-cost housing. Because God forbid they would actually, have the capabilities of getting regular jobs and be successful and be able to move into the suburbs on their own, right? In his mind, no, anyone can do that. Whatever the fuck, right? Experts have said that if the president had acted proactively in February after his first confirmed cases of coronavirus had reached America and informed the public it needed to socially distance, wash hands, tens of thousands of Americans' lives likely would have been saved. Trump comments, which stands in contrast to his repeated insistence that the virus will merely disappear, are among the many revealing of Woodward's upcoming book Rage, due out on September 15th, which is yesterday. Go pick it up. Woodward writes in his book that the president's head popped up after National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien's jarring briefing on January 28th when he told Trump that the virus was the biggest national security threat of his presidency. Says later Trump would implement his partial travel restrictions on China. Months later, however, Trump shrugged off O'Brien's warnings, claiming he didn't remember it. I don't, Trump told Woodward in May. I'm sure he said it. I'm sure he said it. He's a nice guy. By his final interview with Woodward in July, the president has taken all the credit and none of the blame for all the actions taken in combat the crisis, which at that point has killed over 150,000 Americans in July. "The virus has nothing to do with me," Trump said in that month, and he was waving his hands like that. "It's not my fault, it's China that let the damn virus out." White House Press Secretary, you know her name, meanwhile denied that the president downplayed the virus or misled the American people on the threat of a pandemic that's resulted in nearly 200,000 dead Americans. "The president does what leaders do," she insists during Wednesday's White House press briefings. "Stay calm and resolute at a time when you face a challenge." She also incredulously asserted that Trump never downplayed the virus, despite what the president said on record and his repeated promises that the coronavirus would simply vanish. Kicking off his remarks on the economy to auto workers in Warren, Michigan, the Democratic presidential nominee, Joe Biden, blasted Trump over his comments to Woodward. "He knew and he purposely played it down," Biden exclaimed. "He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He failed to do his job on purpose, the former vice president continued. It's a life and death betrayal of the American people. It's beyond despicable. It is a dereliction of duty. It is a disgrace. So yeah, there's that. But let's go back to the one up here, which was from Vox, which was a new audio clip. Newly released audio tape of conversation that President Trump had with Washington Post journalist Bob Woodward on April 13th revealed more starkly than ever how Trump misled the American public about the threat posed by the coronavirus, the disease caused by Trump told Woodward that this thing is a killer if it gets you. If you're the wrong person, you don't have a chance. So it rips you apart. It's a plague, Trump added. COVID-19 is estimated to have a 3% observed case fatality rate in the U.S., making it far deadlier than the flu, which kills people in about 0.1% of cases. The rate was likely even higher back in April, while the U.S. was struggling to ramp up coronavirus testing and developing effective treatments. And as the president alluded to, COVID-19 is especially deadly for people with comorbidities, other conditions, such as heart disease or diabetes. I can't pronounce anything today. But while Trump leveled with Woodward, he said very different things publicly. On April 10th, 3 days before his aforementioned conversation, Trump tweeted, "The invisible enemy will soon be in full retreat." 4 days after this conversation with Woodward, Trump posted his infamous string of tweets urging people to liberate Minnesota, Michigan, and Virginia, states with Democratic governors who had imposed public health measures to slow the spread of the coronavirus, despite the fact that he nearly understood the deadliness of the pandemic. Trump said one thing privately and another thing publicly. As a result, people who listened to him might not have taken the necessary precautions to avoid exposure to the virus that has now killed more than 194,000 Americans and counting. Now he continues to flout public safety recommendations, holding public rallies that has doubled as potential super spreader events, as which Trump has been undercounting the numbers of deaths. There's more of this, but this is... It is not just that he downplayed it. It is that he contradicted the findings of his own scientists, his administration pathetically, even down to Jared Kushner's own comments upon the federal stockpile is not a state stockpile. They made states who were the first ones to suffer from the coronavirus that needed desperately the PPE. They made them bid for it. And then the federal government undercut that and took it away for them to be paid for it. Someone who says that he knows it's this deadly by February, that it's transmittable by air, and then goes on this anti-mask rant that he was doing over a string of tweets and his brain farts. Where one of them, I think he said something to the effect of, if anyone's wearing a mask, they're doing it because they don't like me. You see, Trump personalizes everything. He personalizes the protests for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, calling them thugs, inserting himself into the conversation through his tear gassing so he can take his power walk. And this personalizes this. We have seen so many articles, so many stories on what he wanted to do. Maybe he wanted, like there's one story about him trying to buy up the medical information from that lab in Germany, which they're saying that wasn't really true, but we don't really know. But wouldn't that sound like, you know, as time as election rolls by, that the Trump vaccine would appear? So, you know, you would have to feel beholden enough to vote for him? We're already seeing now he's trying to push out a vaccine before the election. Because again, your lives are not as important as his politics and him getting back to squatting back in the White House. There's so much to say about this. We can go through all the stuff. From the anti-masking, from him saying that it would disappear when it got warm. There's a difference between downplaying and saying the complete reverse. Because downplaying isn't necessarily lying. You can give out the facts, try to put on a brave face, don't go into too many gory details, and then we'll get through this. Past presidents that goes through similar situations than this. Somewhat similar, because not to this scale. Tells you what's going on. Tells you the dangers. Tells you the common sense measures that you can do. We'll get through this together. You won't be grandstanding and saying, I'm going to save you. You know, making a coronavirus task force and making sure he's there because ratings. You know, I said in one of my videos, you know, if he did the right thing, even if it was the wrong reason, like, you know, for selfish reasons, but he did so, like, instead of, like, generating or going to the proper channels to generating a vaccine for the virus. But he's doing it because, vote Trump, you know, that'd be fine, as long as that helps people. But that's not what he's doing. He fast-tracks this bullshit. Hydroxychloroquine? How many times did that fail the FDA? And, you know, I know people who want to tout that stuff for this. And, you know, will use whatever articles they find all over the world in order to support it. But it's still not effective. It's still not officially effective. You know, and for that particular drug, you know, putting such a microscope on that, putting that on such pressure for that, people who need it for, like, lupus and conditions of malaria, they don't get their drug, they don't get their medication because of this foolishness, and they suffer needlessly, unnecessarily because of it. Just another one of those acceptable losses for the sake of this person remaining in power. He's not downplaying. He's lying. Had this been treated as seriously as it was, when it was only a couple of states, instead of the whole 50, instead of 190,000 people to be gone, you know, maybe it wouldn't have been the case. Recently, the last few days, he was doing his rallies in Nevada. He decided to defy the Nevada governor's restrictions because of coronavirus, so he had an indoor event with no fucking masks. The same guy that told Woodward how dangerous the virus was. This is have an event inside, indoors, yay! I need to remind you again, of Tulsa. I need to remind you again, because evidently you weren't paying attention. For those of you who weren't, I know many of you who, that doesn't have watched this. Like from Middle America, or where I do my political haunting. Majority of you understand what I'm going to say. I'm going to repeat this. Those who are hard of hearing or blind. The Tulsa rally, the funny one, the one that they thought that millions of people were like in reserve, but no, that what they thought they only got like 6,000 people, and Trump like came back all pouty because of it. People were wondering, they're worried about the coronavirus and going to this big event. There was at least 10 confirmed cases of COVID. And they came from the Trump campaign. These infected people came and set shit up for this Tulsa rally. 10 confirmed cases came from him, from his campaign. About 8 staffers and 2 Secret Service agents. Should I go back even farther to explain months ago how many people in the White House, from lowly little officials to Secret Service agents to even a cabinet member, contracted it? And of course, famously, and unfortunately, because I don't care who you are, no one should die from this unnecessarily. But famously enough, Herman Cain was there without a mask. A few days later, went to the hospital. Was it even a month later when he died? Even though his Twitter is still downplaying coronavirus, I will no sense of irony or hubris. Going back to the start of this, when I was reflecting upon my own interactions with people, why this frustrates me, why it upsets me. You think it's about Trump, the person, I hate Trump, whatever. I've seen a lot of people hate people on here, on social media and so forth, and go so far as, wanting to see them physically harmed or whatever. I have never a notion of that for Trump. Nor him nor his family, no matter how much I despise them, just their minds and the horrible human beings they potentially are. I wouldn't want to see them hurt. I want to see a level of consequence happening. Something that has never happened in Trump's life. That should have happened at an early age, that could have rounded him out as a human being. At least being told no. Right? I mean, how much of our social interactions, or how much we developed as a person, was because of our challenges? Because of being denied? Of failing, perhaps? Or doing something wrong? And feeling the consequence of those actions? The humbling, the maturity that comes from consequence? The learning of your mistakes to try to do better as a human being because of them? I have no inkling that Trump has ever gone through any of that. But again, all we want was some consequence for these actions. And again, he gets covered from his sycophants. And those who support him, those who prop him up, those who defend him and protect him. For their own reasons. Because You know, everyone is looking out for themselves, and they hitch their star to Trump, and no matter what he says, what he does, how he mangles everything that they pretend to value, they will back his play even if he goes dictator, because they can't do otherwise. But here's the thing. You know, I can be melodramatic as the next person, or I can be flaming as the next person. But I can acknowledge that Trump can win the election again. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Like I said in the last video, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is not going to energize anyone. What's going to defeat Trump will be Trump and the people's hatred of Trump and wanting to remove Trump. You know, that's a majority of people. It is. But again, it was a majority of people in 2016 that voted against him, but they were in the right states. So enough of these smaller states gave enough electoral college victory to Trump, despite the fact 3 million voted against him. People want to say throw away the electoral college because of that. No, I don't say that. I say if you want representation, if you want this to work, then you have to represent everybody, and you have to be in these red states. You have to be in there, because if you're not there and all you have there to represent you is a vacuum, all you have is people using stereotypes and demonizing because you're not there to say otherwise, which is what happened with Hillary. But Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is not going to arouse a movement like a Bernie Sanders would or Barack Obama did. Sorry, they're not going to. Some people will rally to them because, thank God, you know, whatever you think of Joe Biden, at least you think there will be some stability. Some people have the mistaken notion that we can go back to the Obama years. We don't go backwards. We go forwards. You want to get through the Trump era? You go beyond it. You don't go backwards. And figure that one out, how that matters, right? But he can win again. And you already hear the drama of what people will say or do if Trump wins again. They'll move out of the country or whatever. I was never a proponent of that. I didn't like hearing that during the second term of Bush. I don't like hearing that now. You don't abandon your country because of whatever squatting in the White House. And I'm not going to. This is my home. But I do wonder if maybe my response to him winning again is just me just sort of shrugging. Maybe the apathy will finally take hold. I feel it. I feel it in the back there, because there are trends. No matter how much Biden could be ahead, there is a trend that Trump can just have that secret majority, that don't tell anyone I'm voting for Trump majority that magically appeared may magically appear again. Despite the fact that you now have 4 years of what a Trump presidency looks like, of what he has done. And if you like that stuff, oh yeah, you're going to vote for him. Kids in cages, fuck yeah. Tear gassing protesters, fuck yeah. Destroy Obamacare, no matter how much flawed system that is, people are still on it, and you have nothing to replace it with, so you will fuck people who are on it, and you will remove them of any insurance. Fuck yeah. Right? So if you like that, God bless. Fine. Those who don't, Either vote for Biden, write in, even though, there is an argument that says any vote that is not directly, that does not directly go to the challenger, even if it's green, even if it's a third party, even if it's a write-in, that's just a vote for Trump because that takes away a vote from the actual person that is nominated, the nominated challenger. I understand that argument. However, again, we are in this horrible situation where, at least on the DNC side, who don't seem to understand that we are in a situation that you need a movement to galvanize. And the same old guard on their last legs is not what people are looking for. But here we are, right? The cards we're dealt, right? So I'm going over in my head what I'm going to do if Trump wins again. I think for me, maybe apathy will take hold. Maybe for me, it will be my time to bow out of this. People wonder why I devote so much time to this. They'll jokingly talk about, Trump derangement syndrome, whatever. The reason is, this should not be happening to our country. And from people that I respect, people like Vin from Vin and Sorry, or people like Steve Shives, who will explain that, Trump is just a symptom. This is a downward slope that we've been having for years. And he's just a disgusting plateau at the moment, but it could get worse until things, people wake up. But I care because, we all grew up idolizing. We all grew up, at least people who were born in the 70s and went through school in the 80s, who had to listen to those patriotic songs and get kind of patriotically indoctrinated into the United States and everything that mattered, until, we learn later on in life, we forgot to mention in our songs about, slavery and women not being able to vote till the 20th century and second-class citizenry of everybody and all that stuff. All the nuanced stuff, all the bad stuff that doesn't counteract, that doesn't overtake the good stuff of our country. As long as you educate both sides and explain that, because everyone does that. Everyone. But, an office that is supposed to have been so venerated as the presidency of the United States, that you would look back and think of our past presidents as almost demigod in the founding fathers. Trump has spoiled that. He spoiled that for me. He spoiled that for members of my family. He does not rise to the occasion of being a president. We have seen incident and crisis come up where he will talk tough, but then in the end he will throw his hands up and say other people will take care of it. He did that for any time we have a gun violence issue. He did that with healthcare when he couldn't quite couldn't destroy Obamacare on his own. He was just like, we'll leave it to you. Because he didn't want the responsibility. He never wants the responsibility for anything. It is the worst possible person to ever be put in a position of power. This is Cartman with authority. And Cartman's only excuse is that, he's perpetually 8 years old. Okay, I'm going over an hour again, but if Trump wins, then I step away. Other things going on in life, deal with that. Maybe just not devote myself to the fight anymore, not stay vigilant as I I think I've been for the past 4 years. Maybe that's it. You know, cede the country over. So fine. You all voted for him. And as what Lindsey Graham said before he became Trump's caddy, you know, he becomes president and he'll destroy the Republican Party and he'll deserve it. Well, Trump gets his re-election despite everything he has said and has done, up until the point of disgracing the dead of our military and lying to you about COVID-19, as he's doing to this very day, regardless of the fact that we have audio tapes. And you still support him, and he becomes president, and he gets his re-election. You deserve it. We all deserve it. I'll deserve it. You know, whatever we can do differently. Maybe my caustic behavior. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know. Yeah, I'm an asshole. Alright guys and gals, I will see you later because the Ranter rants and the urge to rant is always rising. Unless after November, and I just say fuck it.